we're going to put a minister there. And when some people become Christians, then we'll have a church. So they weren't sending lots of people. They're just sending an evangelist onto a new estate.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Life Explored podcast. I've got a special guest with me tonight. I'm delighted to welcome somebody not within the immediate New Life church family, but somebody from the wider church family, and that's Chrissy Remsburg.
Thank you.
Delighted to welcome you, Chrissy.
Thank you, David. It's nice to meet you.
You. And Chrissy, the first thing that when I met you, the first thing that is obviously apparent about you is the accent. Tell us a bit about that.
That's true. Yes, I can't escape it. I am an American,
Yep.
So I grew up on the East Coast of the US.
Yep.
I have not lived there for quite a while,
Yep.
but that's the accent you're hearing.
Good. You say the East Coast, so New England.
Near Washington, D.C.
Okay, yeah. Now, England and America, we're sort of, George Bernard Shaw, I think, famously said, two nations separated by a common language. When you first came to the UK, Chrissy, what were your sort of first recollections of stepping foot and getting immersed in British culture?
I don't know. So I came because I had some good friends. So I lived in China for 6 years. And I met some good friends who were English. So that's what brought me to the UK. So a little bit, it was a reconnection with friends and exploring ministry that I had not seen before. But it's very true. It's funny you say about the common language, because just on Sunday I was talking about things get lost in translation. And I was just visiting, and a lady from the church called Hannah, who's moved off to the Lakes District now, she invited me round for tea. And I thought, that's lovely. And so I showed up at her house and she laid a nice spread. And a few minutes in, she goes, "Are you okay?" I said, "Oh yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm great." She says, "It's just you're not eating very much." I said, "Oh, well, I ate dinner before I came because I thought we were going to have a cup of tea." I didn't know she'd invited me for dinner. So it was interesting, yeah.
I also know that with some of the cultural peculiarities between the two nations, that tea in the States can also mean cold. It can be, there's a difference here between iced tea and what we'd have out of a teapot.
Yes, yeah. Now, most, I don't know if Americans would think, we call it iced tea. I don't know, if you said tea, I don't know if they would automatically think iced tea or not. Yes. But yes, down south particularly, you'd have very sweet iced tea. And it's very nice.
Lovely, nice and refreshing. Yes, absolutely. Yes, yeah. Any sort of other cultural difficulties around the language and things that are quite different here?
I mean, there's loads that's different. I guess probably because I came. So when I first came, I was here just for a few months, invited by a friend of mine to come and visit their church and to be sort of an outsider's perspective. Their church was growing significantly in a very short period of time, and they wanted to know from an outsider's perspective what opportunities there were to continue growing. And I think as an American, the first thing you notice is church culture and Christian culture in the UK is so different from the US. And so it was interesting to me what was considered a large church by UK standards. And as a result, I think what I saw was UK Christians were much more willing to think creatively and think outside of the box when it came to mission and reaching out to people and connecting with people, because it wasn't a given. Christianity isn't cultural. It's not just what you do on Sunday. I think I was really struck by that, and personally probably quite excited by the opportunities.
No, absolutely. And tell us a bit about life growing up in the States. Was it a Christian home you grew up in, Chrissy?
Yes, I grew up in a Christian home. It's myself and my parents, and I have a younger brother. And I was in Christian school from the time I was 5 until, well, I've never attended a secular institution. That's just random. But so it was very, I think, I guess, regular middle-class American family, quite normal. No traumas or
No.
quite standard, I think, in many ways. And I think I don't know what's interesting about that part of my life.
Well, I suppose. I mean, I think generally the Christians that I come into contact with, there are people who've had Christian influences all their life, and then there are people who come to faith later in life as well, usually in sort of quite dramatic ways. But,
Right.
And who did you have anybody who was particularly influential in your Christian upbringing?
I think I was always very always cared lots about the sermon, so I took a lot from it. I was a kid, so I went to a Christian school that was Baptist.
Yes.
So quite like in the US, that means something different. It was quite sort of strict, fundamental. So they taught in a Bible class, we don't speak in tongues. But I went to a charismatic church where they did.
Yes.
And as a teenager, probably this isn't the normal response, but for me, I thought, well, I need to investigate this. And my dad, this is going to give my age away, but my dad did the tape ministry. So sermons were recorded on cassette tapes.
Yes, yeah.
So I asked my dad, could you get me all the sermons that our pastor had ever preached on speaking in tongues? Because I wanted to do some research.
Yes.
And I sat in my room and listened to the sermons, took my notes. And then I scheduled a meeting with the pastor at my school because I wanted to discuss my findings with him and query our theological differences. I don't know why I was doing this at 16. So obviously I think I was quite influenced by the preaching and the teaching. And I had youth pastors and things along the way who I think I don't know if in that moment I would have said, oh, these are, but clearly they did. Clearly they had a big impact and influence, I think, on what I thought it meant to follow Jesus. Sometimes for good, sometimes maybe not for good. I think there's probably all sorts of influences we pick up, and probably I've internalized some things that are less helpful from that period of time, if I'm honest. And there's other things, that have really impacted the kind of Christian I've become, and sort of my desire to dig deep and understand my faith, and not just take it as someone else fed it to me. This is what
absolutely. Are you able to give us any examples of those things which have really sort of shaped you in a positive way?
I think I think there was a real emphasis when I was a teenager on holy living, on righteousness, on this sort of sometimes quite strict, but I think I internalized a lot of that. It matters how you live, and it matters because you have a testimony before people. And you're demonstrating something about who Jesus is. And so while I probably don't have quite the black and white view of life that you do when you're a child now, thankfully, but I think I still have a very strong sense of actually what I choose to say and do and how I live my life. It says something to people about Jesus. And am I communicating what I would want people to believe about Jesus, or am I saying something that maybe isn't true by how I live? So that's probably something, that's quite...
Well, I think that's great. I mean, I know very often when people have a dispute with Christians, and what they hear from the pulpit is if somebody's a walking contradiction. And
well, that's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Chrissy, I didn't introduce what your role was, but
right.
Are you able to tell us what your role actually is, and which church you're actually attached to?
Yes, so I'm currently the pastor at Beacon Church in Stafford, so that's a Baptist church.
Yes,
and we are a non-traditional church, so we practice what I would call, we're a network of microchurches. So we're 8 microchurches networked together.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, if you came on a Sunday morning, it looks like Sunday morning.
Yes.
But then we have all kinds of things that happen all throughout the week at different times. Looking for ways to the seminary words is we want to contextualize the gospel. What we would all say is we want to bring Jesus into the spaces where people live, work, and play.
And are you full-time in the ministry?
Yes, I'm full-time in ministry, and I don't know, I do all kinds of things, but you probably don't want my CV.
and was it always the desire to go into the ministry?
That's really funny, because I had dinner this evening with friends, and they asked me the same question.
Yes,
and I said, sadly, it wasn't.
No.
But it's because I grew up in a context where women weren't allowed. It was wrong.
Yes.
And so it never occurred to me that I could do this job. So I always was passionate about ministry, and I would sign up for mission trips, and I volunteered, and I ran the youth group at the church I grew up in for free for 5 years. I was the youth pastor, but not in any official capacity. So no, it never... I think I always had a passion for it, but I never would have. I can actually remember very distinctly, before I had my first job in ministry, I was volunteering as a youth leader in my church. And I was maybe 23, 22, 23. So I'd living in my first apartment, my first flat, home visiting my parents, and, probably waiting around for a meal, if I'm honest.
Sure,
And I said to my mom, I just wish someone would pay me to do youth ministry, but that would be like winning the lottery when you don't gamble. Like, I just thought it was that impossible. No one would ever pay someone like me to do a job like that. So it feels, who could have known 22-year-old me would have not have known that I'd be sitting here today in this kind of a role.
Absolutely, yeah. And in terms of finding a job in full-time in the ministry for a woman, are there some denominations which I mean, obviously the Baptist church you're part of, it welcomes women in the ministry, but obviously there's a block with other denominations, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think it varies. I mean, in the US, it varies across denominations, and I would say my experience is there's some. I think the US is more conservative, generally around things like that. And I think there's a perception, I think it is changing, but I always grew up, in my teens and 20s, which was like a long time ago. I always sort of grew up with this perception of people who affirm women as pastors or preachers. Like, women could do women's ministry or children's ministry, right? But women in leadership, that maybe they weren't theologically... sound, that they were too liberal. That was sort of what my teaching was. And I don't think that's true today. But so I think there's still some of that sort of floats around, and there's a bit of a suspicion of the theology of the church almost if they affirm a woman in ministry. And I've found that even in churches where that's changing, they'll say, oh, no, we believe in women leading and preaching and exercising all the gifts. The only women who ever do that from the front are the ones married to the senior minister, And so you think, do you really believe that? So it's very interesting. And in the UK, there's still some of that, but it's much more affirming of women here than in my experience, which is just only my experience. And certainly in the Baptist Union, they're very affirming of women in ministry.
Women who might be listening to this podcast who are interested in going into the ministry, Chrissy, what advice would you be giving them?
What advice would I be giving them? Well, I would tell them to don't talk themselves out of it, because I think we still live in a culture and a society where I think we as women can internalize sort of, we suppress ourselves, nice girls don't say that, nice girls don't do that, that kind of, and even if it's not true, we can internalize it from things that we, growing up, you're socialized, I think, to think certain things. So I think the biggest hurdle to overcome sometimes is within ourselves, and to say, no, you can, and if God's called you, he equips you, and he'll create a space for you. And I would encourage them to find another woman who's leading in a way. It doesn't even have to be in church. Find a woman who leads in the way that you want to lead. And have a relationship with that. We get to know her, learn from her, and say yes to the open doors that come in. There's been a lot of spaces. The job that I have, when I first came to the UK, I was an associate minister. I wasn't leading the church, and I was very clear. I did not want to lead a church. I was not trying to lead a church. I was not interested in leading a church.
Yes.
But when sometimes you can decide, this is not for me, this is not who I am. But if God opens a door, you need to say yes, don't
absolutely.
you?
You do, absolutely.
And assume that he knows you better than you
absolutely.
know you.
Yes. No, I was laughing at that because I know as much as we protest if God wants to go into a particular direction, then we who are we to sort of argue against that?
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely. And do you do any mentoring of women who want to get into ministry, Chrissy?
I do as much as I can. I do. Yeah. So we've got an intern at our church right now who's a young woman who's a total evangelist. She is an amazing evangelist, and she's a gifted communicator, and it's exciting to see. But even young women, we have a little girl in our church called Olivia May, and I don't know what she is, maybe 10 now. But it was a couple of years ago. She's quite little, and she would sit by me on the front row, and she said, "I'm going to be a preacher like you," and she wanted to interview me for something. So she came to church one Sunday and said she wanted to preach. So we worked and we found a space for her to share her favorite Bible verse one Sunday. And it seems like such a small thing. And maybe it's a reaction in me, but because I never saw it growing up. There's something about seeing someone who looks like you in all kinds of ways, right? In all kinds of diversity, what that looks like. There's something powerful about seeing someone who looks like you. So for every little girl in our church, I want them to look at the front of the room and see someone who looks like them, who says, you can do this too. There is a space for you in God's economy to use all that you are and bring all of that to the table, So.
Absolutely. Without saying anything too controversial, Chrissy, what barriers did you face? I know you touched on some things already, perhaps, but anything in particular that women will encounter probably more than men when they're looking at going into leadership?
I think these days it is much more subtle. I think they call them microaggressions.
Yes.
So it's not that I don't know that anyone. I guess it depends on where you are. There are denominations where there would be hard barriers, but in most spaces, there is a sense of people, and I think people do want to. I don't want to besmirch anyone. I think people intend. But I think a little bit it's being gritty and having a thick enough skin and not allowing that voice in your head that tells you you're an imposter or that you're, which men can feel that too. It's not a uniquely female problem.
No.
But I think those microaggressions can feed into your own internal thing, right? So I've stood up to preach before and had people walk out until I finished preaching and then came back in. If as a young preacher, I had only preached a few times at that point. You could really take that to heart, and that it could really hurt. Or people, they demean is too strong a word, but they show you that they don't take you seriously. By things that they say. So they might comment on how you look. I could if I wouldn't tell you all the things that have been said to me, but. By well-meaning people who don't mean anything. And that's the thing. I think that's what's hard about it is people don't mean anything by it, but it does mean something.
Of course
it does diminish your ability to lead or your authority if they treat you, because I'm a single woman as well. So they'll treat you like you're young or you need to be looked after. And they wouldn't do that to my male counterpart. And so I think as a woman, it's finding ways to graciously correct and to offer, otherwise it will just keep happening, and to not internalize that as saying something about you, and perhaps being willing to take up space in a conversation or in a room, in leadership, that's still a thing. These are things I'm learning still. And feels like it goes against my instincts. So I don't think there's like big obstacles, as in there's like this big challenge. But I think the challenge are these small things that could throw you off course, or could lead to people taking you less seriously, or not giving you the same respect that they would give to your male counterpart, and that can undermine your confidence, I think.
Absolutely. I'm interested to know, Chrissy, if there are any sort of fundamental differences between what the Baptist Church might teach and preach, and perhaps what we might experience or believe in a more charismatic church.
I don't know if I could speak to charismatic churches in the UK, because I've attended lots of churches. I can tell you the sort of core principles. I don't know what the word is. In the Baptist Union, they have a thing called the Declaration of Principle. I've only freshly become an accredited Baptist minister, so I feel now I'm under the spotlight. I mustn't get it wrong. But
we can edit.
But I think the core things that say, well, what makes you fundamentally Baptist? I think there's something about the priesthood of all believers. That we believe that everyone is equipped and called to exercise their gifts. There's obviously a belief in believers' baptism by immersion. There is something, I think, about mission and evangelism, and that sort of being a primary call for the church. And I think the fourth thing, which is so dull, but I think is very true, something about governance and structure, that we're congregationally led. So there is no superhero pastor at the top. People say all the time, "Oh, Chrissy, you know, could you do X, Y, Z?" And they think I'm being I don't know what they think I'm being, but I'm not facetious when I say I don't decide anything, because other than maybe what I preach on a Sunday morning, the pastor does not walk in and say, "I declare we're going to go this way." It's we lead by collaboration with the team, and we lead the congregation as a whole, discerning the mind of Christ. Lots of those things, though, I think are true of many churches. So I don't know. I think probably what's most distinctly Baptist is probably something about baptism itself, and probably the governance. I think everything else, lots of churches do have, and I would think lots of charismatic churches.
Absolutely, of course. I mean, I think the sort of concept of a broad church, which is used in colloquial English as well to describe a body with a whole variety of views, is applies in the church itself, actually.
That's right. So I mean, I grew up in charismatic churches, and when I came to Beacon and visited, and I didn't know what to expect. I thought we were going to sing all hymns, or it's going to be, but we don't. All the music is the same, and there are people who are filled with the Spirit and are moving in the gifts of the Spirit, and there are people who don't. And it feels very much at home to me with what I am familiar with. Maybe a little bit more reserved, but I attribute that to being British more than being Baptist.
Of course, yes, but absolutely. I think so. I think so. And tell us a bit about your church in particular, Beacon Church, and its sort of composition and the area that it serves.
Well, Stafford is a county town, and Beacon, I don't know how old the church is. I'm going to say it's 60, 75 years. Anyway, it's been there for a while. It started out as a very small congregation of people, and my predecessor is a good friend of mine, a guy called Alex, was the minister at the church, and when he came, I think there were maybe about 40 people in the church. It grew to over 200 people in just a few years. He's a real evangelist. He's a gifted evangelist, and it's amazing to see how God, worked through his ministry over about 10 years at the church. And so they moved up to a technology park, and the church, actually this was before Alex's time, but it expanded, and they felt that God had said that they needed more space. which was humorous for 40 people who could fit into the building.
Yes.
But the minister before that, Elaine, who I've also met, who's also like, she's a fiery woman of God. She's intimidating but amazing. And she led the church, and they went to this building that they couldn't afford. They rented the building, and of course, as God does, he filled it, and the church grew, and they were running a conferencing center, and it was very much big church. But they started to have these little offshoots of things that they didn't have language for. So they had they were very near a university, and so they had a lot of Chinese students. And so they began to do some work with the Chinese students. I think they did like I want to say like a global cafe or something. But anyway, they had a cafe there at the conferencing center in the church. So they were doing stuff with students. Then they had a vision. The church had this vision for purchasing a home in a new housing estate. And so they pursued that, and they hired a minister part-time to live in that house. And if you met Alex, he's very... his way. I remember asking him, because I spoke to him when they were getting the house, and I said, "Well, how are you going to plant the church?" And he said, "Well, we're going to put a minister there, and when some people become Christians, then we'll have a church." So they weren't sending lots of people; they're just sending an evangelist onto a new estate, and so they had this vision to be very missional and evangelistic. And I came onto the scene around this time and was looking at all these things. And they also had a team that was going into a local pub on a more deprived housing estate. And they were wanting to launch a pub church. And so all these things, and they didn't quite have language. And so I came on to about 8 years ago, joined in. And over time, we began to call these microchurches. So small, contextualized expressions of church. Now, some of them happen on Sunday morning, and they look like Sunday morning. But we now have 2 houses on new housing estates, and we have all sorts of people in the church. Basically, we want to say yes to people who say, "I want to share Jesus." And so we have people who live in housing that is like assisted living housing. And so they said, well, lots of folk in our building, they can't get to church. So they started a church service there in their building, and they run a church service there. So we just started to say, yes, we have people going into a couple of different nursing homes, and just anywhere that's a group of people can gather. We believe that they can.
I love the sound of that, Chrissy.
Of church.
Sort of being outward rather than inward looking as a church, and actually meeting people where they are. I was unfamiliar with the term microchurch. But is it a concept that is sort of quite widely known and used, or?
No, I think it's probably fairly new. I think it is spreading. We use the language of microchurch. Some people would talk about missional communities. You'd probably be more familiar, because out of Sheffield there was lots of stuff happening.
Yes, I mean, I suppose it even sounds like the house church movement, which was also.
Yes. I think today when people think of house church, they think of small groups, which are not necessarily missional.
I see. Right. Okay.
Right. So when we think of any of these sort of models, we're thinking it has to encompass worship, community, and mission. So lots of small groups have great worship, like Bible study, and they have great community, but they don't always do mission. So all of these, so missional communities, microchurches, there's like disciple making movements. They go by all sorts of names, and they have they're not all like for like. They're not all exactly the same. What I call them is more that they're scattered models of church. So one church, but we don't all meet in one place at one time. But we are authentically one church, one vision, one leadership, one governance structure, whatever. Like, we're one church.
Are there any sort of passages in the Bible, Chrissy, that have been more to you than any other part? Any particular parts of the Bible that that really have spoken to you, or you're more passionate about perhaps than others?
Yes, there are 2, but probably they're probably tied to anyone who does work in ministry, whether you're paid for it or not, even as a volunteer. It's hard going sometimes, and it takes a certain amount of grit. And there are days when you, quite frankly, pack it in. And even really the Christian walk. There
Yeah,
are days when
yes,
you think,
of
is it worth
course.
it?
No.
You know, that there are easier ways to live.
Yes, yeah.
So when I've been in those moments, the passages that I've come back to, there are two. There's one where John the Baptist is in prison.
Yeah.
He's waiting to get his head chopped off.
Yeah.
And he's having a crisis of faith, a moment of doubt. And he says to two of his friends, go to Jesus and ask him, are you the one who was to come? So they run off to Jesus. John wants to know, are you the one who was to come? Should we expect someone else? Because John's saying, look, this isn't how I thought it was going to turn out. And I don't know, which is funny, because, you know, behold the Lamb of God who takes with him. And Jesus gives him this slightly cryptic answer, doesn't he? And he says, tell John, the blind can see, the deaf can hear, the lame can walk, and the good news of the gospel is preached. Blessed are those who don't fall away on account of me. Basically, he says, tell John, I'm doing everything I promised I would do. And I am everything that I said I would be. And I'm not coming to rescue you. No. Will you still follow me? And I think that is a hard truth.
Very hard.
But I think it's a real truth.
Yes.
And I think a lot of times in the Christian walk, what we hear from Christians or from churches is that Jesus is going to make your life better. Peace, love, and hope and joy. And there is that.
There is.
But sometimes it feels like Jesus says, I love you. I am the Messiah. I am your Savior, but I'm not going to rescue you from this season of difficulty. And a little bit, it's a moment where Jesus says, this is my story, not your story. John's not the main character of the story. John's death is not a problem for God, but it's a problem for John.
Yes, exactly. No.
So there's that one. And I think in that moment, it quite closely tied. It always then takes me to the moment where Jesus is preaching to the crowd. And he says that if you want to follow me, you have to eat my flesh and drink my blood. It's very strange. They don't understand it. So it says loads of people stop following, don't they?
Yes.
And Jesus turns to the disciples and he says, what about you? Are you going to turn away too? And Peter responds and says, where else would we go? You have the words of eternal life, right? And I think you can read that any way you want to in terms of the tone. But to me, I think I have always read that and thought, perhaps there's a moment of like this, maybe Peter is just as freaked out as everyone else. And maybe he's slightly regretting his decision. But a little bit, I think we've all had those moments where we think, this is hard and this is scary and I'm not even sure what I'm doing here. But I don't have any other option. And maybe even if I had another option, I might take it. But I don't have any other option, Jesus, because you are the only way. And sometimes I think that's the only thing we have when we're following Jesus. Sort of clinging on to, I might like something else, but I think this is all there is. Those are not the happiest passages.
They're not the happiest, but actually I think they are wonderful things to hold on to when the going gets tough. And I was so blessed to the fact that you were, even as a pastor, saying that there are times when, and actually I think about giving it up. But you've stuck in there. So I think that's that gives all of us some hope. But I think they are really useful verses to actually consider, and especially the first one about John the Baptist. I've always sort of mused over that one, thinking, well, John knew what his role was, but even then, at the end, he was beginning to doubt. But that's actually given me new clarity on that. So thank you. Chrissy, away, obviously from a very demanding role, what sort of things do you like to do outside of ministry?
I used to love to run. I was training for a marathon at one point when I had a knee injury. So I have a dog, so we do lots of walks, which I find really sort of clearing and gives me a lot of peace. And I'm an avid reader. Like I read a lot. I read a lot.
Yes.
So that's probably walking the dog and reading. I'm a raging introvert.
Yeah.
So when I'm not working,
Sure.
I tend to do things where I'm a bit more on my own. So those are quite quiet pursuits,
Yes.
but
Yes.
that's what I enjoy.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I've come across this term lately. An introverted extrovert. So maybe you come across as somebody who's quite ebullient and chatty and engaged, but you say the other side of that is quite introverted. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Very. I think I'm a good faker.
Yes,
There's nothing extrovert about me.
Mm.
I actually, I find introvert extrovert stuff very interesting.
Yeah.
One day I'll write a book,
Yeah.
but Susan Cain has written a very good book called Quiet. Are you familiar?
I'm not. No.
Okay, so
No.
she talks lots about, I won't go into detail,
Yeah.
but she talks lots about introvert, extrovert. And what I find interesting is actually there's far more to it than just like, do we like being around people or where you get your energy from, which is usually what we think of.
Of course.
Extroverts get energized with
absolutely, yes,
people.
yeah.
Introverts have to be alone. There's a lot of interesting things about how our brains process information when we're overwhelmed and underwhelmed, decision making. It's very, very informative. And it's helped me actually in thinking about what refreshes me and what fills me up, knowing I'd encourage anyone, if you're looking to read a book, Quiet by Susan Cain.
I'll take it as a recommendation. I'm thinking dog walks, especially you've got the stuff at your moorlands and some lovely countryside once you get outside stuff, haven't you?
Right,
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of time out on Cannock Chase.
Yes.
Which is beautiful.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Yes, absolutely. And you talking about books, that was going to lead me to a question I often ask the guests. It's if you're cast away on a desert island. This is my Radio 4 desert island disc type of question. And you don't have to choose music. You can actually take books with you if you want to. And obviously the Bible is one. But
of course, yes.
Yeah. But if you're sort of cast away, Chris, you can have a luxury item and you can take some books with you. What would you take?
Well, this is always so hard.
I know, especially when you haven't prepared for it. I know.
Oh, right, no. Well, I immediately know my answer. I'll tell you why.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I'm a pastor.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And people have perceptions. I had a girl talk all the time, like it comes when you preach, you talk about your life. So everybody knows at my church that I like to read. And I had a young lady come to my house once and I have books everywhere. And she was looking around and she goes, wow, I really thought that you were just reading Christian books all the time. And I think she was shocked to see John Grisham and Stephen King then.
Yes.
So I always think I'm going to let somebody down because my answer is not going to be spiritual enough. But if I were going to take some books, I think I would take some Brandon Sanderson, the Mistborn trilogy. He's quite a good writer, and it's fantasy, and they're very long, and they take a long time to read.
Yes. That would deal with some of the boredom on the island,
That's
wouldn't
right,
it? Yes.
right.
Would there be any luxury item you might want to take, Chris?
What qualifies as a luxury item on a desert island?
Oh, yeah. We can presume that there's a power supply. So I mean, I know people have wanted to take a PC and things like that. So I've given them the allowance of actually being able to plug it in somewhere.
Oh, right, that's very nice,
isn't it?
No, I mean I love camping just so I don't have to plug in. So no,
right,
I don't think I'd be too worried about that.
No.
I think my luxury item, I have to have like a stash of Pepsi Max.
Well, yes.
Everywhere I go, I bring Pepsi. That's horrible.
No, that's me. You can't.
I want to read fantasy books and drink Pepsi Max. It sounds like a fantastic vacation,
doesn't it? I know, absolutely. Yes, yeah. And Chrissy, looking forward now, just sort of bringing everything together. I mean, what sort of ambitions have you got sort of within the ministry? Perhaps where you'd like to see the church go and how you'd like to see your life sort of pan out as well as you move forward.
Well, I don't know if I have any great goals for my life other than to just, keep living it.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't have any grand schemes, but ministry, I think... I believe that the Holy Spirit is moving in the United Kingdom. I think God is doing a work. And whatever kind of church, whatever kind of space, I just would long to see a revival. I'd long to see young people and young adults really released and empowered and making church their own, because I think church right now is still very inherited from Christendom, isn't it? And
it is, absolutely, yeah.
We're doing what we've always done, but maybe there's something fresh and new that the next generations are coming up.
I'm encouraged to see that statistics suggesting that Gen Z are now coming, are now exploring faith, perhaps in a way that the generation before that hasn't, which is great. And
are you guys seeing that at your church? Are you seeing young adults and Gen Zers coming in?
We've got a really good youth here, but most of the youth, I think, are probably coming in with as part of a family. So I haven't seen quite as much there, but I know from university campuses certainly there seems to be perhaps where Gen Z are embracing faith, which is great, because Christian unions, I think there was a backlash against them on campuses when Christians were being deplatformed and all sorts of things. So I'm very encouraged by that. But yeah, I mean, long may this generation continue to want to embrace and find out about Jesus. I think it's wonderful. Yeah.
No, there's something very encouraging.
Absolutely,
about that.
I really do.
And I think there's a real need for church planting and sort of contextualizing, planting the gospel in ways that people can. And maybe these younger folk coming up are going to make us uncomfortable, but push the boundaries and reimagine.
It's nice to be made uncomfortable, but yeah. And Chrissy, is there anything that I haven't sort of touched on that perhaps you'd want people out on YouTube to know about know about you?
I don't know. Contrary to what it may appear in this conversation, it's very awkward talking about myself. I love talking about ministry. And I am passionate about, I guess what we didn't talk about is I spend a good chunk of time doing training and equiping other pastors and church leaders in other churches. So I've written books about church planting and, doing things like this. So, it's a passion for me. That's what I long to see. And I want to see everyday, ordinary Christians empowered and equipped to make disciples, right? So that's what you're supposed to say, isn't it?
I think that's a wonderful way to end. Thank you, Chrissy. Thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed chatting to you.
Thank you, David.
Well, thanks for joining us once again and listening to that podcast episode. We hope you enjoyed the content. And if you haven't already, subscribe, whichever platform you're listening on or watching from. And we'll catch you again for the next episode of Life Explored.